Yeah, we're back again for another episode of the Friday Council. Recording on a Friday this time, so we're living up to our name.
You happy with that take this time, Nev?
Yeah, happy with that. What was that, the second take?
Just a second take.
Just a second take. Yeah, so I'm Nav. Got Daniel with me.
What's up, guys?
And David.
And girls.
Yeah, let's not discriminate. I think checking out the analytics, we had 100% men listeners at this stage.
And it was all us.
Well, who knows? There might be a couple of extras, but it's worth a shot.
What did we think? We think we might springboard off today. I thought it was kind of juicy to call it like an epidemic of closed-mindedness. And that can sound a bit poncy, but I think right from the start, no one's going to admit they're closed-minded on anything. And you can be open-minded on some things, closed-minded on some others, but and I'm definitely included in that, and we all will be to a certain extent. So I think it's good to preface the whole conversation so we don't come across too high and mighty, even though we are. But closed-mindedness, it's real obvious. I think probably the prime example that most people are going to relate to is as you get older, you start to notice that with your parents. I think that's the first stark example because you live with them, assuming you're still living with them. You're living with them all the time. And you go out into the world, learn some new things, new perspectives, bring it home, and it makes full sense to you. It's obviously true sometimes to you. Bring it home, mention it to your parents. No deal.
Shut down.
No deal.
Yeah, I feel like I've had that a few times. I think I started noticing it around the 18 to 20 years of age when you start providing examples or ideas of hey, should I try this? Or I'm looking to, I think for me, one of the big things was wanting to move out for the first time. And surprisingly, I was told no, you're going to have to deal with, rent, electricity, all the utilities, and you'll struggle out there. But I'm thinking, why? That's the opposite of open-mindedness. Though you wanted to try something new.
I really don't understand that perspective, because it's what did your parents do when they were your age? If everyone gave that advice, we'd all just be living with our parents. No one would ever. I don't understand that perspective.
I don't know where it comes from, but
it's a strange one because your parents would have faced similar struggles when they were our age, and they would have presumably pushed on and gone ahead and faced those struggles. And
I think probably for me then it probably comes from a cultural perspective, having a half Asian, half Kiwi, although I'd identify more as just a Kiwi. But from the Asian perspective, it's you kind of live with your family as long as possible.
Right.
Yeah. So I have some cousins living overseas who probably nearing their late 20s, 30s, early 30s, who are still living at home, which is in Western culture, it's quite different. It's very bizarre because I think the consensus is as you turn 18, or a lot of people just move out, move on.
Yeah. Do you reckon, would you say that comes from, it seems from an outside perspective that Asian cultures as well, a bit more emphasis on family, so they're going to end up staying together longer, which I think is a
it also could be a financial thing too. I think one of my cousins, is 29, still living at home. But this
in New Zealand?
This is in Canada.
Oh, in Canada. Oh.
Although,
same.
Yeah, Filipino, but looking at house prices over in Canada, I think the median age for
they're ruined, man.
the city that he's living in is around 1.1 mil.
Yeah, Canada have a lot of the most unaffordable cities in the world.
So maybe that's what it is, but that's one example for closed-mindedness.
Yeah, I think just because they're parents, I think we could extrapolate to just all older people. And last time we mentioned, as you get older, your political tendencies at least go more conservative, and I think, I don't know if it's right or wrong, but people will assume or associate conservatism with closed-mindedness often, and the progressive on the other side, even just the word progressive implies open-mindedness. So maybe it's just an age thing. I think it's pretty evident as you get older, you're just going to slowly close off your mind because it's easier to be closed-minded because
definitely
you're not having to constantly always be weighing up options and basically be undecided.
Like living in your comfort zone essentially.
Yeah. You make a little comfort zone. It can get exhausting, man. When with the whole fake news, the term fake news just highlights all the different perspectives, and you have to figure out a perfectly legitimate looking website, whether it could be straight up lying, not even a slant anymore.
True.
It can just be straight up false. Like I saw a screenshot of, it went a bit little viral, of a New Zealand Herald, a doctored New Zealand Herald article saying that Jacinda Ardern was thinking about putting the vaccine into the water supply. And it was unironically shared on a conspiracy Reddit.
No.
I think it was on r/conspiracy. I was like, no way, because it was New Zealand relevant. So I was like, I have to look this up. I don't know if I would have if it wasn't New Zealand relevant. I'd be like, in America they're putting the vaccine in the water standard. But I was like, is it happening here? I haven't heard. Couldn't find it, and then found one article saying it was doctored.
Stupid off the bat, because it's not a vaccine that can be swallowed. Like, it has to be injected.
Yeah. It seemed outrageous, but
Speaking of that, though, have you ever fallen for like a post or an article? Well, I think there's examples on Facebook of people sharing articles without having actually read what's going on. So
No
you only
doubt.
see the title.
I fell for the Avicii was a serial masturbator. I think that was. Do you remember that one?
No.
No, I can't.
It was
say I
like
heard that one.
after he died. It was pretty rough. But someone obviously just made up that he was like addicted to porn and masturbation, and fully false. And it was multiple sources. I just saw it, so I assumed it was the truth. But I fell for that one, and I brought it up to someone, and he's like, that's it.
It's crazy
It's
though
a
how
lie, right?
quick, like in today's age, just how quick information can spread.
Yeah.
I can't think of any
What-
examples off the top of my head, but
What do you guys reckon the link between like open-mindedness and straight up gullibility? You're talking about falling for fake things. There's probably a relationship there, possibly.
Maybe. I don't know. That's
possibly. I think maybe some of it just comes down to time. People just not having the time or taking the time to actually look up or read or understand. It's depending on topics. Like for me, you don't have a lot of time in the day or a lot of spare time. So if you're saying like you want to try and get the gauge of what's going on in as little time as possible, I think New Zealand Herald, for example, now list on an article approximately how long it takes to read. So if there's something that's 4 minutes or less, maybe I'll take the time. If it's long, it's like, well, I just, you don't have the time. It's not, if it's not important to me, I'm probably not going to look on. But in saying that, if you don't take the time, then you're open to that gullibility factor.
I think thinking about it, open-minded, closed-minded, it's a real delicate balance that there's got to be maintained, because you can go way too easily either way, and often without realizing it. With the closed mind, like I said, no one's gonna admit, like, I'm pretty closed-minded. But when you got, I don't know, I think the obvious example is like a hardcore religious fanatic, or even scientists as well, hardcore. They're exhibiting aspects of closed-mindedness often, and it's kind of oftentimes built in to their system, to their worldview.
for sure. Yeah.
Like an easy out. I know that, now if you'll disagree with this, that a heavily religious lady at my old work, any criticism of, or any questions that too close to home, or any criticisms of the religion are from the devil. So it's like it's the ultimate self-fulfilling prophecy, where she's not being open-minded to consider or question. Yeah.
I think, well, it's generally you have a bit of bias, to your own beliefs or your own, I guess if you're on that sort of journey looking for answers, whatever that may be. I guess you just have a general bias to what's going on. So I can see that from her perspective, obviously she's wanting to refute or rebuke I'm can't remember which one it is. Yeah. If you're trying to like affirm what someone's saying or deny it, well, if you believe in something in particular, you're generally going to side with that. On that, saying that though, yeah, like when you're, I'm trying to think, yeah, when you are trying to understand, or you have someone criticize what you believe in, it is hard to bring down those walls and take what they're saying at face value. So I think that may come with a bit of practice, but I know that I've had that in the past where, you know, if something not offends you, but if something you don't believe in, you try and shrug it off automatically, but you just still need to take time to actually listen. Because I think in the end, like, you can have a conversation or with someone, you might have disagreements, but you tend just to agree that having that conversation is more important. You move on from that. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I know
Probably
what you
a bit
mean.
of a tangent.
And also the religious fanatics seems like the obvious example, because I think majority of people aren't religious anymore. I don't know if I'm right or wrong.
Yeah.
But people, you know, any atheists or non-religious people will say, "Oh yeah, it's all good. Like, I believe in science and truth and whatnot." But you mentioned shrugging it off when someone's criticizes your worldview. I mean, science does that. Scientists do that all the time. It has its own dogma, and
It shouldn't.
it shouldn't.
Yeah,
I mean,
because
by definition, it
by
shouldn't.
definition, like science
But
is
it's
like
pretty dogmatic.
Yeah,
often.
I'm sure. That probably is the case.
Yeah.
But yeah, in theory, that shouldn't be the case because, yeah, by definition, science changes when the facts change.
Yes, yeah.
It shouldn't be like this fixed position. It should be like, if you show me evidence that what I previously thought wasn't true, then now you change that.
Yeah. But you'd hope that just to be a general mature human opinion.
But I know.
But it takes work to maintain. Yeah, for sure.
And like, you think you see that with where like science isn't settled, things like history and whatnot, where like people are interpreting things, it's not like rock solid evidence. And then when someone comes in and says, actually, maybe this happened, the conservative scientists will be like, no, this is what we believe because yeah,
they get defensive. A truly open-minded person isn't defensive. It's not a trait that pops up when something comes up. But like, I think you can see it a lot on the fringes of science as time goes on. You can see it, like, I'm sure the notion of, I don't know, the atom was ridiculous, or like quantum physics and particles. Scientists 50 years ago surely didn't flat out denied that. A lot of them. There's no way. There's no way you can.
Well, I think
there's an
we
observer
also
effect. You can
mentioned
observe. You can change how particles behave.
Yeah, I think we also mentioned, it might have been the first podcast, or maybe it was off podcast. We were talking about tribalism in a sense, like, and that's with science. If you're part of like a group of scientists or whatever, it might not even relate just to science, but if you're part of that small group, you're probably generally leaning towards what you know. Or if it's, say, religion, for example, you're probably more going to hang out with the same people that have the same beliefs. So it's kind of like, I don't say like an echo chamber.
Yeah, no. Yeah, but I think it is. Yeah.
But it's hard to, like, because when you actually come into contact with someone who has different beliefs, or you say it in politics as well, you either go the opposite way, or you have to take the time to actually listen and be open-minded. But is it worth the time, or is it worth,
Yeah, I love it. I mean, that's kind of the point of this whole podcast. The kind of the spirit of the whole podcast, isn't it? It's like appreciating different ways of seeing things. But that brings up a point I was thinking about. Communicating and hanging out with the same group of people. Obviously, everyone knows on paper that they should always be meeting new people and talking and entertaining new ideas. But I think, maybe not obviously, but I think a massive cause of ending up closed-minded, whether you notice it or not, often people don't even notice it happening, is a lack of novel experiences, I think, whether it's friends or just any kind of experience that's new, that challenges you, that doesn't fit into your easy unthinking habits.
Fair point. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is why I think, if I was doing a debate, I think that physically traveling, is the medicine for closed-mindedness. I think I strongly recommend it, and I strongly think every single person needs to at some point. Doesn't have to be overseas, but like an adventure on your own, where something's different, where everything's different. Overseas is better because more is different, so it kind of delivers the medicine quicker and more potently. But what do you guys reckon about that?
Maybe. I think it can also, like, as what is it, the saying, like, everywhere you go, there you are. So it's like a lot of people travel to escape. So it's escaping whatever. So that's like, and then it's not really. I think, if you go over with a certain intention, then maybe. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Fair. I mean, I think that.
I think you see that with the sort of I can think of one example. It's one of my cousins, and she's like a perpetual traveler. So it's like, you could say that's the medicine, or is she just running away from because she can't find herself? And yeah.
Is she an open-minded person, would you say?
I don't know well enough to be honest, but I see her as like, there's one of those, she's well into her 30s now, and like still like just can't settle down. So like, at some point, does it become, well, you're just escaping? Like, yeah.
I mean, I'd like to think she is an open-minded person, otherwise my point is mute. But
I don't know. Yeah, it's.
What do you think about? You guys have travelled.
Yeah.
We've all travelled a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like I'm fortunate enough to have travelled, and I've only travelled once by myself. The rest of the time it's been with family or ex-girlfriend, whatever. From a personal perspective, like, I enjoyed the challenge of just traveling, like having to understand and do your own thing and do the research to, like, just getting there. Like, you have to apply for. Well, I think I went to this. I went to Canada, and so you need like a special. I think it's called a. I flew through the US, so you needed to apply for like a electronic transit authority sort of thing, and just those sort of things, and just learning how to, I guess, become more independent. So I look at it from that perspective. Do you need to travel by yourself? Maybe not. But like, I'm fortunate, I guess, that I have, and I would like to do it again. There's always, like, for me, there's a guy I watch on YouTube who does like individual camping trips. So he's got like
solo camping.
Yeah, he's got like a decked out ute, which with a cab on top, and he does, like, people send him different recipes, and he just cooks. Like, he just cooks meals that people recommend to him,
niche.
which is quite cool. I'm thinking, like, wow, that would be something I'd love to try, but it's just never gonna do it. I think there's just too much resources needed to do a thing like that.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think travel is the only thing.
Yeah, I think that's probably the conclusion I'd come to, is that it
not the only thing
can be, or there are things that you can take from it, but I don't think it's a blanket like solution. Like, if everyone travels, like, everyone's going to be radically open.
Yeah, right.
I think for some people it can work, for others maybe it doesn't, but for most people there'll be something that they can take from it. I think because you are obviously like, if you're going to a completely different culture, naturally you're being open to new experiences.
I think it's just because it forces you, like brute force. Oftentimes things are right in front of your face. You can't deny them or act as if that people don't live this way or that way. When you're looking at it, it's real. Like, you don't have a choice. You're like physically bringing yourself along. And whereas when it's something like you're stuck in a dogma of religion or scientific dogma, you don't. It's all like abstract and mental ideas and whatnot, so you can easily shut it off, like putting a wall up, like we said. But you can't do that when you physically bring your body somewhere, when you're seeing like horrific poverty or or just even like
Right.
certain jobs or lifestyles that exist.
So
And you
maybe
go,
it depends where you go.
Yeah.
Because it's very easy for, I think I've seen friends, well, I say friends, but you see people you go to like high school with who are doing travel, like doing their OE. Most of them seem to go to like Western countries, so like the UK, and they'll do like Europe and around that. It's like the whole like Contiki sort of thing. But it would probably be very different if you were going to like African nations or South America. Like
I think the more different the better.
Yeah, the more different it does open you up to different world views and world experiences. That's kind of why there's like watching The Amazing Race, for example. Like you turn into like a game sort of thing, but you do get like a nutshell into like what's going on in different places. I'd love to experience it, and it's one thing I'd always want to say, like to travel and see as many countries as possible. But as I've gotten older, priorities have sort of just dwindled, or not dwindled, but more like, it's more from a family sense than wanting to have my own personal things that I wanted to do.
Yeah. Oh, because like growing older, I suppose that's why it takes so much effort, I think, and it's a real delicate balance because you end up having those extra responsibilities that usually are pretty monotonous often. You can't obviously just keep traveling, and when you do for too old, like you're saying, for too long, it's kind of gets. I'm sure she feels somewhat a little bit of pressure, maybe, to be like, okay, I'm running out of time somewhat in certain respects.
Yeah, well, I know in her case, my cousin's case, she can't have children. So a lot of people in my family are theorizing that's why she's not like, it's running away from oh shit, I can't settle down like everyone else can.
Yeah, possibly.
So, I'll keep venturing the world. Hopefully, family doesn't listen to this podcast. Sorry, might get in trouble.
You often bring them up. It's brave move, but it's all fair, pretty respectful.
Also, I think another point would be that not necessarily everyone has to be open-minded. Well, definitely they don't have to. I mean, that might be the ideal thing if everyone's open-minded, but the world can still function even if everyone isn't. I think if you sort of like boiled it down to like an evolutionary sort of perspective, most people are going to be like the betas or whatever. So that's the safe option. And only a small percentage are going to be the alpha, and which in this case might be those exploring the world, doing novel things. Because you can't have everyone doing novel things, or that'd be too risky. Obviously, it's changed a bit with like modern society, where a lot of things travel used to be a big thing, a lot unsafe, scurvy, and a high chance of dying. It's not quite that way anymore. But from an evolutionary perspective, you only need like a small percentage of the population to be these super open-minded people who are willing to take risks, because there's a high probability. Previously, in a past life, there's a high probability that they're going to die. Yeah. So you can't have your whole population doing that. As I know, it's a bit different now because we've sort of cheated evolution or nature, because we've made everything so safe. Yeah. Like travel's pretty safe now.
It's definitely, I reckon, open-mindedness is definitely really tied into our evolution. And we're when they say you've got like a brain that's designed for the African plains 10,000 years ago, that's living where we are now, and that's why I think it's such an effort, because naturally your body if you just let your body naturally do what it does, your brain being part of your body, it flows into these patterns automatically, which is like, being closed-minded is like efficient. You don't have to think, and it doesn't take time. It's like efficient, which is what you need.
It's safe.
Yeah,
and I think that's the key thing, is it's safe, because it's much safer to stay in your cave, stay in your house, than it is to get on a plane, or previously get on a crappy ship.
Or you hear a rustle on the grass and you're not thinking like, oh, it could be a falling tree, it could be blah blah blah, it could be this.
Yeah,
you should be like, it's a tiger.
So I think humans are hardwired essentially to be closed-minded, or in a more broader sense,
naturally.
Humans are hardwired to stay in their comfort zone, which is closed-minded is part of
that. I agree fully. 100%.
Just a small sub question. Won't go into detail, but do you think with the whole VR, virtual reality, craze, but do you think that might change how
Movement.
we
It's a
view,
movement.
or just how we view, I guess, traveling or communicating? Because you could look at that as an example, like you're meeting up in the metaverse, for example, and you have the Eiffel Tower or whatever in the background. It's like you're almost there. Or even Google Earth, for example. I remember when Google Earth came out and I was looking at just the novelty of flying through certain areas and having that like 3D view of like the different buildings.
That's wild.
And yeah, it's like, well, do I need to actually travel?
Well, I'd say the fact that lots of people still traveling would say the answer is that no, that's not a replacement. Certainly not the Google Earth. Too early to say with metaverse, but the fact that people still want to go and see the Eiffel Tower in person would say that the Google Earth is definitely not satisfactory for a replacement for most.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I don't know about
Yeah,
it because to be honest, I haven't tried like virtual reality, so I can't. I can't comment on that.
I think because my whole reasoning behind the travel as the number one medicine to close-mindedness and a whole lot of other things like self-improvement and whatnot is the fact that you're just seeing so many so for example, if you go to like a poor country and there's certain jobs and classes of people that just simply don't exist in our Western societies. So and the more different types of jobs and lifestyles that you can see that are real, that are, like I said, right in front of you, the more you can entertain a thought when someone suggests another way out there lifestyle. You go, oh, well, there's all these kind of people that live all these whack lifestyles that I didn't know about until I was there.
Yeah.
And I think VR could do that. It could show you pretty much an infinite number of brand new things as on demand.
Yeah, I can't comment as that. I don't have any experience with VR, so I don't know how good it is. It's something that I need to have a hoon on at some point soon because I've seen some things that make it. Yeah,
I like to think we'll let the pioneers pay super expensive prices for it while it's and also
Let the
while it's
early
kind of shit.
adapters do it.
Yeah, and we'll ride the mainstream wave when it's real good and cheap.
Fair enough. No, it's just
Same with drones. I think the same thing with drones. I'm gonna get a drone, but I mean they're pretty cheap now.
Yeah, I was going to say
But,
it's been around for a good decade. I mean, probably
about
even
time.
longer than a decade, but generally, for about 10 years, I'd say. So
Those weird drone nerds did the hard yards for us, spending thousands of dollars on
well,
it.
now you even have like drone racing as a sport. Like it's incredible just how much you could do.
Yeah.
But that was just a side question I had for you guys.
Good. Another point I think about maybe us, it's a good thing to remember and keep in mind for us and anyone listening that open-mindedness, it made full sense. Open-mindedness needs to come before truth or proof of something. So a lot of people may say or may think, may not even know that they think this, but that I'll be open-minded about God when you give me the proof or evidence for that. That doesn't really make sense. You need to be open-minded first to possibly even look at any supposed evidence objectively and truthfully, because you're coming at the quote evidence from a place of closed-mindedness to start with. So it really needs to be prior to everything, real core and primal. Yeah.
I just think, for example, like trying a new thing, like playing football, indoor football for the first time. Like I've never played football before. You know, it's like, well, generally I'm probably not going to enjoy it, if I have my own bias to trying something new. But like you say, you need to go in with an open mind because otherwise you're not allowing yourself to actually experience it in its fullness.
Yeah. I know. You're not looking at the whole picture.
It's a tough one.
And its whole picture if you're not already open-minded to start with about it.
Yeah, it might be different from a religious perspective, I guess. Like if you're going into a church or like a mosque for the first time, it's hard to go in open-minded because you might just bring your preconceived judgments or your own beliefs going into it. So how would you train yourself to do that sort of thing?
I don't know. It is kind of a training. It's almost like a muscle way because it takes constant work. You do have to train it.
Like, do you just need to numb yourself to everything that's going on and just try and like be present?
Yeah,
because
look at things
it's so easy.
With a fresh mind.
It's so easy to just be distracted all the time. Like you have your cell phone all the time, like going off. yeah, like how do you go in and experience something open-minded?
Yeah,
That's a difficult
I don't know if there's
one.
any way.
I think, yeah, it's super tough, but I think the best example would be if you look at, I think, kids in general are open-minded. Like,
Yeah.
that's it. But I don't know how you get back to that state, but that I've heard that advice thrown
Yes.
around before is like, be like a kid, you know,
Yes.
because kids are
I live my life that way, man. Live in
Yeah,
that childlike
it's
sense of awe and wonder.
super
That's what it is,
tough
all the time.
to be like that, but I totally understand. That's like, because when you think about it, like kids, even when it comes to things like race and sex and stuff like that, kids in general, there'll always be exceptions, but in general, kids, and the younger they are, don't care about those things. Like, they're not even it's not even like a thing, like the idea that, oh, this guy is a different race, like,
Yeah.
I don't want to hang out. It's just not even a thing. Like, they're not even aware of it because it's so super open-minded.
That's so obvious. If you've spent any time around kids, it's real obvious.
Yeah. So
instantly. So refreshing.
yeah, so I don't know how you ever get back to that state, because obviously with that state also comes like a level of naivety. So like kids can easily be duped.
Gullibility, yeah.
So that would tie in with what you were saying earlier.
Yeah. Do lots of psychedelics.
Drugs is certainly one way to expand your horizon.
Yeah, legit.
That's definitely one way to do that.
Yeah, I think looking at different ages of people objectively as well can help you determine where you may be or where you may be sitting. You can compare yourself to a child who's almost 100% of the time going to be pretty open-minded and some grumpy. They're usually grumpy, old, closed-minded person. And I think closed-minded and grumpy goes together as well. But that brings me on to my next point of...
I'll just quickly stop you there because I think the example of hearing, like children don't tend to have a lot of filters, which I think is a great thing. So often they'll just say what comes to their mind and they'll speak, it might come across as offensive or funny. Like it could go one of two ways, but I think that's good because they don't quite have the cognitive ability to understand everything. So what they experience is kind of just like in the moment. Yeah. And I think that's an awesome thing.
Yeah, in a lot more ways than we appreciate, in many more ways than we appreciate on a societal level, kids should be our teachers. Yeah. In a lot more ways,
Well, yeah, like children will always be the future of
obviously
society.
They don't know how to invest in crypto, so they're dumb. But we're not looking at them for those reasons. We're looking at them.
They don't understand
learn from
the
them
trends
in
of the
different
stock
things.
market.
Yeah. But what I was going to say was closed-mindedness. We all do it, knowing that we all do it. I don't know. It's just this day and age, but it hurts people. I reckon it's not good. That's why no one will admit to being closed-minded, because it's not a good thing. I don't see any positives from it really, other than efficiency, saving time and thinking and worrying. If you just you take the first
I think there's a balance.
Yeah.
So, like for example, that quote, like spend time with people who are more like-minded than you, because like
who are more like-minded.
Yeah, or spend time, like surround yourself with people who have the same
like goals and
aspirations, because generally you're probably more likely to achieve those. But then if you don't have that, you could fall into the trap of becoming like an echo chamber where you just have the same people around you. You don't hear different thoughts or different perspectives. So yeah, there's a little bit of a balance.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. It's I don't know. I can go both ways because I can see that the case for both. Like if you're super happy with like your belief system and you've got like a group, then there's not really an incentive to expand your horizons either. If even though it may be technically an echo chamber, if you're satisfied and you're meeting your basic needs and more, like
you've just in, like for example, like if you're part of a church or a community, like the whole aspect of that, just the community sense, like you're there to help each other or to build each other up. You have those personal relationships where if something goes wrong for one member or one family, the others are there to help lift them up or support or surround them. that's good. Like there's
doubt.
positives to that, but also I think there's definitely positives to having people with different. So for example, you and I, like we all have different views on certain things. A lot of it would be the same, or maybe from like a political perspective, but I don't want to close myself off to not hearing what you guys think, because like it just becomes like an echo chamber. You're just hearing the same things.
To a certain extent, it comes down to respect as well.
Just general respect.
Yeah.
I think we've gone through, maybe in the last 20 years, like you could live next door to someone completely different to you, you'd still get along. You might pop over and see them or whatever, but now I just feel like maybe it's just where I've grown up, don't even know my like neighbors. You're in a house, you don't know who's on the opposite side of you. Whereas I remember growing up, like riding my bike around the street, like you'd know all the kids next door.
Probably again a kids thing more than that. It's adults that put up walls.
Yeah, I mean, and
so
also literally we put like it could be a bit more relevant,
like,
more metaphorical than
chances are if you had a kid and your neighbor had a kid, they'd be friends.
Yeah,
and then you would become friends with the adults. But if there's no kids involved, then it's very much an adult thing where you might say hi to your neighbor, but you don't really have a close relationship. So again, I think that's a child versus adult thing. Kids will congregate. Because I was the same when I was a kid.
I'd be like, will you be my friend? Straight up. Sure.
And then now as an adult, I know my neighbors, but we're not close. Like maybe occasionally I have dinner with them, but not like a regular thing. And
that's more than most people.
That's probably more than
and that's not a lot, really.
That's like a super like once a year maybe thing at best. So, but that probably is more than in my like last house. I don't remember doing that. But you'd say hi to them, but you didn't really know them.
Yeah, and I think this proves this relates back to traveling or just generally new experiences, because that's like someone's right there all the time, and it's like an untapped resource of a new perspective.
I feel like
we never touch.
Potentially,
so you don't need to or want to.
People in the place that you're going, and this is a generalization because it'll probably be the opposite in some places, but when you're a tourist, often people in the country that you're touring are more open-minded to you, because they're like, oh, this guy's like different, like, so he's not. Like I felt like that even happened in the States, where people are potentially more receptive to us because, oh, you're from New Zealand, like these like harmless people, like
And I kind of like, tell me about what it's like in New Zealand. Open mind. They're ready to lap anything up. I told the Americans that we still cooked on fires, and they believed it straight away. I was like, no, I'm kidding, guys. I'm kidding. We have electricity.
There's all sorts of like myths like that about New Zealand. Like, I remember my uncle was saying that in Russia, the people that he spoke to, of course, it won't be the whole of Russia, but some of the people he spoke to in Russia still thought that we wore
grass skirts,
yeah. There's always like New Zealand's got a real like mythical reputation for we're like these hobbits who live in caves still and stuff. Yeah.
Well, I mean, Americans are on a national, global scale. They're kind of infamous for being closed-minded and only knowing about America.
That's definitely true. Yeah.
Yeah, and even their knowledge about America sucks, as we've seen those viral videos lately. But
just on that topic with tourists, do you think it's so easy to pick out like a tourist? If you see a tourist in the street, like you kind of know, like you I don't know if it's just me. Like I've been walking through the CBD in town, and you can just tell. And generally, I've gone up to a couple like, hey, you look lost. Like, do you need help with something? Because in that sense, like, cool, you want them. They're a guest in your country, so you want them to experience like the ins and outs of everyday life here from like just a normal everyday life sense, I guess. Obviously you have the different things like, you should check out the stock standard like tourist things, but if I'm going into another country, for the most part, I would love to understand their culture and not just see all the different landmarks and go visit this museum or go do that. Like you just want to be like a regular.
I think I often think that about traveling as well. In our day and age, where you can pre-book everything and research everything online, where before the internet you just have to go and figure it out once you got
Yeah,
there.
Yeah.
that's a good point.
I think that's changed. Imagine traveling. That's a completely different way of traveling, and you have to be way more open-minded because you have to notice and recognize opportunities when they show up, and
Yeah.
you just don't know where you're going to go. But I think it's kind of like sterilized the traveling to a certain extent. Thinking about it as a medicine, it would have been more potent back in the day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably true. Although, like, you can probably still, if you really can.
You don't have to use
Yeah,
it. Yeah, you don't have
if you
to.
really can, you can cut yourself off from
That's
the
true.
technology. And I think, some people sort of do
Yeah.
that.
It kind of just increases the risk of mortal danger. So that's the only
that's
reason.
for sure.
But if you think about it for any amount of time, you realize not that much can go wrong. You're basically, especially in a lot of countries, you're basically a king over there. You have
in
so
the
much
Western
money.
world, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe not in like Papua New Guinea or something.
No, but then again, in the Western world where you're not so much a king in terms of how much money you have, then there's libraries with internet. You can call people and
Yeah.
As a tourist, it's not too
Well,
bad.
that's an interesting thing because I remember I went to my sister's wedding was in the Philippines because she married a Filipino, and I remember walking along there's some sort of market of some kind, and I'd bought an ice cream which I think was about 35 pesos. So I gave him a 50 peso note, and I think the equivalent of that it's like 35 pesos to $1. And I'm just like, here, keep the change, because to me it's nothing, but to this person, it was like such a generous like gift that they like came up to me after I'd finished this ice cream, took my rubbish, and disposed of it for me. Like, that's awesome.
That is
Like,
service
that's
for
cool. It's
effectively a dairy.
yeah, totally. I was like, well, you wouldn't get that over here, you know.
No, that's a good feeling. Not even just for like the altruistic reason of making that guy's day, but also feeling like a king. Like, this must be what the truly wealthy feel like walking through around us when we're on the street. They give us a $100 note.
I think
for a
New Zealand
$20
is,
item, keep it change.
for the most part, we are quite generous people. Like, I haven't looked at the statistics recently, but in terms of like giving to charity, like, we are quite generous.
I think we literally are. Yeah, but I also think, much like no individuals thinks of themselves as closed-minded, I think most countries would also say the same thing.
Yeah,
we're
that's
pretty
probably
good.
True.
We're pretty generous, but I think literally New Zealand is one of the up there.
Yeah, we seem to rally behind like different causes all the time. So,
Yeah.
like, you just think of like GoFundMe, for example, or what's the New Zealand equivalent here? Like the one run by Spark.
I thought it was.
Oh, is it
GoFundMe.
is that New Zealand?
Yeah, certainly.
Unless that's just the worldwide one.
Yeah,
but,
like, I think it is. Yeah, like a.
but you just see the enormous amounts of money and donations on certain things, which is it's great. Like, as a society, like going forward, we kind of need a bit of that. You can't be too close-minded to like yourself, where it's like, hey, I need to look after myself, my family, and we're going to progress forward. But you also you need a bit of balance. Like, and saying that, like, I've had help from different people, for example, like community from my church. But if you don't have that, like, how would you move forward, for example? You know, it's like you need a bit of a leg up sometimes to help each other, but you can't all just be about yourself all the time.
Yeah. As I in a previous pod I mentioned that, I mean, you don't want to go not believing the same thing that everyone else is there for and just kind of milking them for their community and niceness. But if you feel like you're missing that in your life, honestly, go to a church and you'll be pleasantly surprised. I swear. So I was just thinking about open-mindedness on a societal scale, and I think you brought up a real good point, David, that, well, talking about evolutionarily, you only want a small amount of people that are willing to take those risks. And being open-minded doesn't necessarily mean you're going to take risks, but do you guys reckon, and just looking at society in New Zealand or even the world on a big scale, that the balance is right of closed-mindedness to open-mindedness then? Or do you think it'd be better if more were open-minded? Or
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have like a concrete answer to that, but I feel like I mean, like, yeah, if you look at the rate of change in the world, I think probably technically we're doing all right because like things are changing faster than ever. So that must mean that there's quite a few open-minded people.
That's true.
You know, and even when that comes to like cultural things, like it's changing super fast. Like if you consider like cultural norms when your parents were our age to where they are now, like it's radically different.
Yeah.
So some would say that it's not good.
Speeding up. Yeah, it speeds up. Like TikTok culture is effectively a whole new culture, and that's all Gen Z.
Yeah, so I don't really like have a concrete answer to that, but I think the fact that the world is changing rapidly, it was probably not. We're not like in a terrible place or something, you know.
Yeah.
I think there's some pros and cons. For example, like
Yeah.
I look at it from like food, just how awesome it is. You have different types of restaurants like around, you know, you have Indian, Chinese, Turkish, Mediterranean, like at your doorstep here, whereas maybe 20, 30 years in the past, you know, you might have like a limited selection.
As a symptom of open-mindedness, maybe.
Yeah.
It's like a sign that people are at least open-minded about food.
Yeah, totally. Well,
By how much
for me, like,
have. That's
I
an
would
easy,
say,
safe option.
Yeah, like Indian
yeah.
food is probably like my
Good
favorite like cuisine of food, Indian or Mediterranean. And it's like, well, we wouldn't have that without a sense of open-mindedness in New Zealand.
Yeah.
Like, we'd just be having your Friday fish and chips. Or,
Yeah. I think on that note, like, I can't say this because I haven't been there, but from what I've read is that Japan is a super close-minded country.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're real nationalistic. And
Yeah,
close-minded, yeah. But they do, actually, yeah. Looking at Japan, I suppose, like notoriously high suicide rates.
Yeah, I think
but efficient.
Yeah.
Which is what happens with closed-mindedness, I suppose.
Yeah.
It's efficient.
Yeah, so again, didn't have any like grand point to make of that, but just as an interesting note that I've heard that Japan is super close-minded culturally.
Yeah, they're real tight on immigration.
Yeah, real tight on immigration.
Kind of uniform culture.
Yeah.
So. That's true. But and I suppose that like the only benefits really I can see of closed-mindedness, is like hyper efficiency of personally, and then that kind of manifests on a national scale, I guess.
Yeah.
But then.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah, I honestly, I don't know. They are efficient, as you say. Well, they have a reputation as being efficient, but I don't know if that's because they're closed-minded or not, or if that's just...
That makes sense to me.
Maybe that is. Yeah, maybe that's something into it, because they can be conditioned to...
And like I said, the closed-mindedness hurting people, and I wrote down depression, but and like in Japan, is obviously...
Yeah, it's notorious.
That's a trade-off of... the closed-mindedness. Sorry, the cat's just going nuts around our.
It's certainly.
Attention.
Japan has a reputation.
I'm gonna punt that cat in a second. So what did you just bring up, Nev?
Yeah, I was thinking with like Japan, for example, from like a nationalistic perspective, it can be detrimental in some ways to growth. So, looking at like their economic example, like their stock market index, the Nikkei, I don't know how to pronounce it. But in the last, 30 years, we've only seen about 11% increase in the index, which historically is not a lot. Okay. Like, it's hardly anything. Could you imagine in the last 20 years if you were following like an index, you would have lost money over that time.
True. We usually aim for like 3 or 4% a year?
Oh, it depends. I think
8.
Yeah, 8 to 10%.
That would be an economy, but like as a stock market index, it would be like 8.
Okay. Yeah, because you also have to take into
GDP
account
like 2-3%.
Right. Yeah, you also have to take into account like inflation, so there'll be real and nominal increase. But yeah, it's just you wouldn't have seen a lot of growth. Whereas, for example, like the S&P 500, which tracks like the top 500 US companies or largest whatever, you'll see the difference in increase.
Yeah.
So it has its detriments, but then
in reference to being closed.
I think the main reason for that is because of Japan's aging population, because they don't have children over there. They've got a real big problem.
That's true.
And that's becoming a problem here, but it's a massive problem in Japan where they don't have kids. They're well below the replacement rate, birth rate. They have been for a lot longer than we have. So they have like all these retired people who are no longer productive. They don't have enough young people I believe that's the main reason
That makes sense.
why Japan's economy has been stagnant
But-
for so long.
And then, like we mentioned, and I think is evident as well, old people equal closed-mindedness.
Yeah, so
And so if they have more, as a massive generalization, but if they have a larger proportion of old people, I suppose that is kind of relevant. That kind of links.
Yeah,
in.
well,
they'll have more closed-mindedness on a national scale.
yeah, you can tie that in
Possibly, yeah,
because we
that's
say
a
that Japan is seemingly a very closed-minded country. So
Yeah. I realized just before when you were saying about the S&P 500, that's American, right?
Yeah.
It's the American one.
That's the US.
Stock.
Yeah,
Thing.
500 large companies, not
Stock
necessarily the top 500, but
Yeah.
I think like Tesla, for example, is like new to the S&P 500.
Yeah, I feel like I misspoke. I misspoke when I said America being notorious for being closed-minded. I think I really meant ignorant of other countries, but
Yeah.
they obviously, since we're comparing their economy to Japan's, America's probably, in a business sense, quite open-minded. I think they're quite hustlers. Hustle culture is probably stemmed from America, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that might be a result. There might be
yeah,
just the open-mindedness versus closed-mindedness might have way more implications than
another big one is because with open-mindedness, and this is a big thing in America, is immigration. Yeah, so you have a lot of smart people coming from Elon Musk is a perfect example, right? South African, a lot of smart people coming to America, whereas
brain drain.
Yeah, whereas it's super hard to get into Japan. They're not recruiting talent from. So that's it. So America for a long time has been a hive for recruiting other nations, very talented people. So yeah, that stems from open-mindedness. Say we're cool if you're Indian or South African or whatever. If you got brains and you can contribute, you're welcome here.
Yeah.
That does stem from open-mindedness.
And then that feeds back to those countries anyway through the culture and technology that comes from America anyway.
Just in that sense too, with America, it seems like there's always a market for anything and everything under the sun.
Yeah.
So if you think of like a product, for example, there's probably a market out there for it. Whereas in a small country like New Zealand, I say Japan, for example, because they do have quite a large population, but you're just not going to get the same amount of opportunities that you would here as you would in the US for certain things.
And I think that again, you can't need an open-minded population as a whole to be able to make a new product and sell a new product, because maybe in Japan, no Japanese person is going to want something that doesn't fit into their day. I'm trying to think of an example. Some new product, maybe a Western product. They'll be like, why do I need this? I don't need this. This is useless.
They'll probably just
shut it off.
Turn it into like a vending machine thing and you have a...
Unless it's kawaii, unless they've got little cute cat ears on it, they don't want it.
It seems like, I don't know, watching like different videos of Japan in the past, like their whole vending machine culture is amazing. Like you can get anything.
That's kind of like a vending machine is pretty much is not a metaphor for closed-mindedness. Yeah, it's very like efficient. It's very like a metaphorical for stock efficiency, standard, hyper efficiency. And just like mechanistic.
Yeah, well, just the fact that they're like those sleep pods that they have. Like a lot of business. Efficient. Yeah, like they just spend most of their time in the city. They'll do long hours of work. And
it's kind of blowing
sometimes
my mind,
don't
actually,
even go home.
Thinking about open-mindedness and closed-mindedness on a national scale and how that reflects in so many ways. Are there any examples of countries that we can think of that disprove that are not notoriously open-minded but have a hyper-efficient and mechanistic society like Japan? Or the opposite?
Yeah, not off the top of my head, but I can certainly think of it more extreme examples that would confirm that closed-mindedness is closed-minded.
North Korea? Are you going to say North Korea?
Well, I wasn't going to say North Korea, but that would be actually the number one. I was going to say like a Afghanistan or something like that. A super fundamental Islamic country, very close-minded.
Yes.
And you don't see a lot of progress. Now, one example where you are seeing some progress is Saudi Arabia, because even though they are very much fundamental Islam, they know that there's money to be made by being like America. So just recently, because they're super wealthy, they're funding like a private golf league at the moment.
Yeah,
where they're
I've seen
recruiting like
that.
all the best golf players in
Like
the world.
LIV or
Live,
yeah.
something like
kinda
that.
lit.
Yeah. So they are well aware that, like, I guess again as a broad concept, open-mindedness is opportunity to make money.
Yeah, I think money and I think because money's not doesn't discriminate between skin color or whatever.
That's
or
just
religion.
one example. There's a lot of examples of Saudi Arabia like doing stuff like that. Apparently, wrestling WWE is really big in Saudi Arabia now as well.
It's like,
And so they're saying that like they're looking to Americans saying, oh, this worked for them, makes them a lot of money, so we'll start doing the same stuff, even though
that makes so much sense as well. That's also blowing my mind. The focus on money, because even Saudi Arabia, I suppose, spiritually quite closed-minded. They're quite religious.
It very much goes against like that traditional Islamic, but they're saying, well,
because they're just embracing just money so much, and how money doesn't discriminate and whatnot. It kind of encourages open-mindedness. I think money. So because you're thinking like, how can I make more money? And it can be anything.
Would that be possibly like a correlation then between open-mindedness or opportunity to like capitalism? Because in that sense, like if you have like
Wait, what do you mean?
Well, capitalism in terms of like free market.
Yeah.
Well, there's more opportunity for different things or different businesses.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're more closed-minded, well, then you're probably
It encourages
capitalism
might encourage open-mindedness.
It
You're
certainly
kind of
does.
looking for the gap.
Not like true capitalism, but because there will be, when you're taking like Saudi Arabia into example, like there will be different like beliefs from Islamic culture that will influence business decisions or just the country as a whole, but they also do see like the opportunity through just having sort of a capitalistic way of thinking, similar to like the US is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so on that note, like, it'll probably never be as good as America's because they're always going to have this conflict.
Totally.
So, but they're saying, but then one thing may lead to another, and you may end up with a generation of Saudis who have been, much, like things have been a bit more liberal, and then that has a flow-on effect. That could happen. I don't know, but in theory, that could happen where a younger generation sees, this is way better way of living, and then they're like, well, why don't we just get rid of the old way altogether and go with this way? That could happen. I don't know.
Yeah, that's cool. You always kind of think money is the root of all evil in the world, but thinking about it that way, especially if your country is kind of stagnant, if it's a North Korea or whatever, maybe a leaning onto what makes more money is beneficial, and oftentimes, and maybe like North Korea, I mean, what are they? I don't actually purport to know if they're a poor country or not.
Oh, definitely poor, super poor.
But is the wealth just insanely disproportional, or are they actually poor?
It's both. So
both. Yeah,
it's
true,
both. So obviously, the people at the top keep a huge portion of the wealth that is generated,
and even on world standards, they'll be wealthy.
Yeah, but that's not saying much because North Korea is a massive country, so like it's still going to generate a decent sum of money for a group of 5 people or even like 100 people to have like probably billions or if not trillions of dollars, probably I don't know, I'd have to look into it. But but even if that wealth was fairly distributed, North Korea would still be a poor country, put it that way. So even if there wasn't like a corrupt people that taking heaps of the wealth, it would still be a very poor. It'd be like a typical third world country and that's primarily because of the way that they live. They're super close minded. They don't do trade, or they do very limited trade with like China and stuff. So they
right. I was just thinking, money, like how money affects the open mindedness, but that makes sense.
What was that? So now we're probably like at the hour mark. Should probably just call it there soon. I think.
It's in conclusion, in summation, travel is Daniel's number one recommended. If you don't want to be closed-minded, do that as much as possible. That's mine.
I'd agree in some ways. I think it's hard with just in terms of resource like travel.
Although actually not travel, new experiences.
Okay.
As many as possible.
Like don't limit yourself to certain I guess, beliefs or interests, like you do have to try new things, even as a small step, like try a new restaurant once a month, or not doing the same thing over again. But in terms of like overseas travel, like there's different ways. Although it is like the cheapest it's probably ever been. More potent.
It's
not.
It's a big change.
It's not feasible for everybody.
No,
don't go to Australia though.
It's basically New Zealand.
It's such a New Zealand thing to do. I'm going traveling.
I'm going to the Gold Coast.
That does suck.
Hey, unless you go to the Outback or something.
Yeah, unless you're going to like Alice Springs.
Yeah,
even that's
very
probably
interesting.
like still even commute. I don't know.
You'd be staying in a
but
hotel.
unless you're going like somewhere like where you could like potentially die because like there's no police.
Risk your life.
Yeah.
That's my advice actually now.
Like
risk your life.
Where all those serial killers live in the middle of nowhere of Australia. There's lots of rumors like that, or not even rumors. Like there's lots of people being killed in the Outback, like murders that have never been solved. Or
if I was a murderer. That makes sense.
Well, it's huge, it's massive.
That's why I want to move rurally.
No, you're just murdering this podcast.
Nice.
That was good, though.
You're killing it.
That was good. The talk about the open-mindedness in relation to money kind of blew my mind. It's made me think about money in a whole different way, actually. Rather than just the blanket, the closed-minded, which I was before.
Well, I say
money's bad, money's
more money is
evil.
more opportunity. Once you open yourself up to, you get to a certain level of wealth or resources, you kind of have more opportunity. Just comes one and the same.
Yeah, it's all about balance.
It's
man.
like
I think a lot of our talk is going to come back to balance. And I just want to say, David, I reckon you're real open-minded because you always can run. What's the word? You can always run on each perspective on an issue. You can always like rattle off the implications is what I'm meaning. If you're truly open-minded, I think you'll be able to explain and go on about implications if this were true, and you can trail off truly open-mindedly. I think an example I listened to on the podcast, he said about open-mindedness, he said, imagine your mum was born from an egg. She was the first person that was born from egg conception, and what would that mean? What would that imply? And kind of a test of your open-mindedness. If you do that now, what would that mean? And how far you can go with that, I think, is a good indicator of how open-minded you are, rather than being like, oh, that's impossible. What? That's stupid. That's silly.
Right.
Closed-minded. Yeah. Open-minded, you'd be like, I don't know. Oh, that would mean mum's like some kind of genetic freak. That means I'm the first of my offspring. Should be on the world famous.
Yeah. I think also just going in with, I say open-mindedness, just the ability to be able to question everything. So I don't know, like that's quite broad realistically. But if you're going to something new, it's like, well, what is this? Am I going to enjoy this? What do I want it's going to be like? Who am I going to meet? Or you're just constantly questioning things. That gives you the ability to be open-minded.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're just...
Which is a source of a lot of anxiety for people.
Yeah,
I think,
totally.
as well. And that's a chicken or mentioning the egg again. It's a chicken or the egg where the anxiety comes before or after closed-mindedness. I think it's going to encourage closed-mindedness because... Or fear, actually. Fear will encourage closed-mindedness.
Is very synonymous with
we could go on another COVID rant right now, boys, but we're at an hour.
Save that for next time.
We'll save that for
fear.
next time.
Fear next time.
Yeah, fear's pretty bussin'. Very broad. I like it.
Fear and anxiety.
Yeah.
Except I won't know how to talk about it because I've never experienced fear in my life. No, that was good.
You're leaning on confidence versus arrogance. That's fair. I think we'll bring it into landing.
Episode 4 done.
I think that was probably one of our best yet, boys.
I'm excited about that. Oh, just the money thing blew my mind. I got lots of thinking to do now, man.
We'll see you all next time for episode 5.
Dope.
Peace out.
Bussin'.
Farewell.